power move. Battle for the lead now. Tightens up in turn 3.
He'll dive to the bottom. He's going for the lead.
Hard, strong power move to the bottom of the racetrack.
Now, this week's edition of Pistol Pete's Power Rankings.
The first road course race of the season is in the rearview mirror, and after last Sunday's visit to the Circuit of the Americas, here are the 10 drivers that make up this week's edition of the Power Rankings. One driver from last week's top 10 has dropped out, and that driver's name is Brad Keselowski.
Oh, Brad.
So Brad Keselowski is out of the top 10. Brad, he's been in and out, I think, 5 times already this year in the first 6 weeks. So he's out this week. So that means we have a new face inside the top 10 and a reordering of drivers from last week. Let's start in the number 10 position, and it's the driver who was number 9 last week. It's Denny Hamlin, and a nondescript day for Hamlin, who, like many Sunday at COTA, was the victim of contact and spinning out. The JGR driver collected himself, drove home to a 16th place performance. He's 11th in the point standings, but it wasn't a lot of his fault, Mike, but another week where Denny Hamlin was really and truly not part of the picture of being in the top 5, top 10, or trying to win the race.
Yeah, I know that it wasn't, self-induced to a degree. Denny Hamlin is a head-scratcher to me so far this year. He's been up and down. He's only got 2 top 10 finishes in 6 races. He's been close to having more, but it just hasn't worked out at the end. Again, it goes back to the context thing. But, and that's what leads me to believe that, or ask the question, I should say, is it a JGR thing? Is this a Toyota thing? Because Reddick won over the weekend, so that's a Toyota. It's like, what's going on? There's a lot of head scratching going on the 11 and other Gibbs cars as well for me right now.
Well, I can't completely say, well, it's a Toyota or a JGR thing simply because you just gave 2 examples that would dismiss that. So
right. It
might be some of that. And now Denny's talked about the nose piece change and all that kind of a deal. But there have been some other things. I think there's been some other factors. I think Sunday, to be fair, he was involved like a lot of people were and a lot of different things on track. So we're going to put Denny at number 10. We're going to go to number 9. It's another Toyota driver, another Joe Gibbs Racing driver, and it's a guy who dropped down 6 spots. He was 3rd last week, and it's Christopher Bell, and he had some speed there, and he might have had a better finish had his day not been impacted by an accident. We found out yesterday he made hard contact with Joey Logano late in the race. Bell only went 73 laps. He was credited with 31st at COTA. He's 5th in the standings, but I think finally of the 6 races we've had this year, that was the first time we really saw Christopher Bell have a really bad day. But like a lot of other drivers, Mike, he had a damaged race car at the end of COTA.
Yeah, he got swept up in some stuff there at the end. It was almost like how he got swept up in that restart at Fontana, to where they were okay, they were decent, right? They were pretty good, and then situations out of their control. The Christopher Bell portion of the JGR thing I just brought up with Denny, then that's the other side. So you got the 20 that has found some good fortune, much more than the 11 of Hamlin. So they stumbled. I'm curious. I have C-Bell on my short list at Richmond to start. We'll see what's going on there. But I think that was a blip on the radar. That team's a strong team, in my opinion. That whole 20 team is very strong and worthy of consideration every single week for either fantasy or race picks until they give us, in my opinion, a prolonged body of work to say, no, they should not be favored going into a race weekend.
Well, another component of the Bell story is another guy that you wouldn't think is a good road racer because of where his background is from, but he is a good road racer. He really is. And so I was somewhat surprised that 31st is where he wound up. But again, the accident at the end certainly knocked him out. So C-Bell, number 9. Let's go to number 8, down a couple spots for this guy as well. He was 6th a week ago. It's Kyle Larson, and there's really no way to put this. It's just been a rough stretch for Larson here trying to finish races. We know a few weeks ago, a couple of weeks in a row, he was in position to maybe win races, and then late cautions took him out of the running. He made some early contact there on Sunday at COTA, had another 1 or 2 incidents along the way. To be honest, after all what I saw the 5-car do, it was really interesting. He finished 14th on Sunday. But here's my point about what I talked about earlier when you look at the point standings. Because of that huge penalty for the Louvers at Phoenix, as of now, Kyle Larson 27th in the point standings. So it's been an odd year for the 5 team, Mike, because there's been speed. He's led laps. They just can't put a full race together, it doesn't seem like.
Well, that's another one, too, that only has 2 top 10 finishes. And they were right in the middle, races 3 and 4 of the 6 that we've run so far. And there have been situations where they had a good run going at Atlanta. Eric Almirola blows a tire, takes them into the wall. So some of it is not in their control. But to your point, when they got buried by that 100-point penalty, which, again, will be adjudicated later today with the appeals committee, but when they got buried, they've been really having a hard time getting back on their footing. And I don't know if that penalty took a lot of wind out of their sails. But, I mean, yeah, 27th in points, but the finishes just have not been spectacular Kyle Larson, Cliff Daniels-like finishes that we've been used to.
And, road course racing hasn't been kind to Kyle Larson either lately. When you think about Indianapolis last year and the Roval last year, and now you got the next road course after the last one last year, has not been a good stretch for the 5 team, turning left and right. So we're going to put them number 8 this week in the power rankings. We'll go to number 7, down a couple of spots. Last week he was 5th. It's Kevin Harvick, and he started actually pretty deep in the field. Took the green flag 29th on Sunday. Persevered, brought home a 13th place finish. I don't know about you, but I can't remember much of Kevin's day, standing out one way or another. I think he was just one of those guys in survival mode out there and bounced off a lot of things and a lot of people. He still sits 4th in the point standings. We'll have his crew chief Rodney Childers later to give us some insight from Sunday and the season. But I'd say overall, it's still been a strong start for Kevin and the 4-team baggy, even though Sunday was kind of a middle-of-the-road kind of a day for them.
Yeah, nothing really stood out to me either way. I'll be curious to get Rodney's thoughts as crew chief, who's going to join us at 9 o'clock this morning. But Kevin didn't make a splash for the good, didn't make a splash for the bad. Quite frankly, I don't ever recall hearing his name mentioned when I was tuning in on Sunday to the telecast. So to me, it was a middle-of-the-road kind of day for Kevin Harvick. Nothing to brag about, but nothing to complain about either, as far as we are concerned, anyway.
Wait, what went on in the 4-hauler after the race, we can't tell you, but 7 is where Kevin Harvick is in the standings. So we'll go to number 6, and a big drop. This was the guy that was on top of the point stand, top of the power rankings last week, and now he's 6th this week. It's Joey Logano, and literally had his hands full from the get-go there at COTA. A week after winning Atlanta, he was able to lead just 1 lap Sunday, and as he explained to us, wound up finishing 28th after getting hit by Christopher Bell and some really hard contact at the end of the race. So Joey sits 3rd in the point standings, Mike, but as he explained to us yesterday, it was just one of those weekends where they just had their hands full from start to finish, and you go from the penthouse one week to literally the outhouse the next week at COTA for the 22 team.
I was surprised by that, and I know that he got course limits called on, or he got his course limits called out by the sanctioning body early on in the race. And it was like almost he got in the back of the pack and was able to get his way up with some pit strategy. But with all the contact and the rooting and the gouging, that's when it's rare, I think, to see him be a victim of that and to finish the way he did on Sunday. But, I mean, isn't it amazing how this sport works? 1 week you're king of the hill, and then next thing you're deep in the valley. And that's what happened to that 22 team in the last 2 weeks. Yeah,
and they've been up and down. And it's funny, you mentioned Phoenix when we were there a few weeks ago. Joey said this yesterday. The last time they were at Phoenix, obviously they won the race and the championship. This time they went back and they had a hard time. It's sort of that up and down kind of year here early on for Logano, who does have a win, and he's 3rd in the point standing. So he is number 6 in the power rankings, which takes us to the top 5.
Number 5.
The white flag about to wave here for Tyler Reddick as he has pulled out to about a 20-car length advantage over Alex Bowman, and he is battling with Kyle Busch.
All right, that's Doug Rice from the PRN broadcast. You heard that here Sunday on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, talking about some of the today for the guy who was number 10 last week in the power rankings. And we're going to move him up to number 5 this week. Indeed, it is Alex Bowman, who hung around near the front of the field, took advantage of the chaos that broke out at the end through all those overtime finishes. And at the end of it all, a 3rd-place effort for Alex Bowman at COTA. Just continues to be that sneaky driver in the 48 car, week in and week out. 16th of the standings, again, because that's the penalty from Phoenix. But, Mike, once again, there's the 48 and Alex Bowman near the front of the field.
So it wasn't flashy, it wasn't pretty, but it was effective. And he was able to continue that streak, obviously, of top 10 finishes and the early season successes. What is it with Alex Bowman in COTA, though? He always finds himself in the mix at the end of these COTA road course races.
He does. And another guy that I would say that if you extrapolate not just COTA, his road racing prowess is pretty good. He's been a top 10 finisher at COTA all 3 years since NASCAR's raced there. So you're right. And, of course, he was in the middle of it in the Truck Series, a couple of years, or last year, and Saturday as well. So we're going to put Alex Bowman, again, 16th in the point standings, but he is number 5 in the power rankings.
Number 4.
Caution is on the court.
That'll be the 5th yellow of the day. Ross Chastain couldn't get his car refired. He's stranded up there in turn 1, Rob Albright.
Yeah, you could see flames coming out of the left side exhaust as he was trying to get the car restarted. Apparently unsuccessful in doing so because it still sits motionless.
All right, last year's COTA race winner is Ross Chastain. He was number 8 in the power rankings. We're going to move him up to number 4 this week, and as you heard, had some issues there, brought out a late caution when he spun out and couldn't get his car refired quickly enough before NASCAR had to throw the caution. But he was able to come back through all the chaos at the end and finish 4th. So it wasn't an easy day for Chastain. Had a lot of contact, some controversy. That was also part of the one team's day there. But another top 5 performance. And with that top 5 performance, Ross Chastain is on top of the NASCAR Cup Series point standings.
Hard to believe. I believe it was when we started overtime. He was last. And as we heard from Denny Hamlin, he was one of the drivers that in one of those overtime restarts, send her on in there, son. And he sailed her on in there and got about 18 spots in one corner. Listen, I'll give it to him now. That's called pumpkin time right there. He was able to seize it because I didn't think Ross was able to bounce back. When he got turned and he got stalled out, I'm like, okay, well, the one's done. But they were able to regroup. So kudos to them for getting back to where they needed to be inside the top 5.
Well, he came back, and then, to be honest, at the end, he made contact with Alex Bowman, who then made contact with Daniel Suarez. They got Daniel all hopped up. Daniel went and talked to Ross afterward and say, what are you doing? And then, of course, Daniel was not happy with Alex Bowman down pit road. So for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Ross Chastain aggressive at the end. He gets the 4th place finish, and he winds up number 4 in the power rankings.
Number 3.
Regardless of whether he holds on to the spot or not, it has been a wild last 30 laps for the wily veteran Kyle Busch. He has held off all comers. He doesn't have anything for Reddick. Question is, Nick Gilman, can he hold on to the second spot as he approaches turn number 10?
All right, more of the PRN broadcast. Talking about the guy who was number 4 last week in the power rankings, moving him up to number 3 this week, as you heard. Kyle Busch, and a very solid effort for Busch. His first start for RCR at COTA. He had a chance late to maybe get the lead by showing some physicality. If he could have caught Tyler Reddick, he chose not to do that. Raced him cleanly and turned in a runner-up finish. So Kyle Busch is second now in the NASCAR Cup Series point standings after a very impressive runner-up finish at COTA on Sunday.
I would say that, yes, you would smile about that. That's something to put in your back pocket. I thought that was a very quiet day, but a very clean day there as well. He didn't find himself in any really bad situations, didn't find himself in the, I don't want to say he wasn't threatened at all. He flexed the muscle that he needed to, got a good finishing position because of it. And I think that to get out of there with the finish that they had, I expected that based on the winning and the successes that went with that car. And I would say that was maintained over the weekend. Would you not say that too?
No doubt, and that's a point to remember. That's the race car that Tyler Reddick drove to a couple of road course victories a year ago. So you knew Kyle was going to be in good equipment. He had a good setup for COTA, and he turned in a second-place finish. So he has already got a win now and a runner-up, and Kyle Busch is second in the point standings, number 3 in the power rankings.
Number 2.
Tyler Reddick now headed up the hill to the final turn.
Tyler Reddick now diving into turn 11, first gear, making that left-hand turn. Now on the front stretch. Tyler Reddick has been the fastest man all day here at the Circuit of the Americas, but he's had to survive 3 overtimes to win the Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix. Tyler Reddick gets his first win at COTA and his first win in 2023.
All right, there's Mark Garrow from PRN, the race-winning call for the guy who races his way into the power rankings. He wasn't ranked a week ago. Sunday's race winner, Tyler Reddick. And in a very short period of time, he's established himself as one of NASCAR's top road racers. His 4th career win came with his 3rd Cup road racing victory Sunday. Dominated, leading 41 laps, but as you heard, he had to persevere through those 3 overtime finishes. So Tyler Reddick is 10th in the point standings, number 2 in the power rankings. And what can you say outside of the fact that he is just really good as a road racer, and he brought 23-11, their first win of the season, Mike.
You nailed this one, son. Tyler Reddick on road courses is money. It doesn't matter if he's driving a Chevy or a Toyota, and he backed it up again. And when we go to our next road course, he's going to be on my short list. Very, very, very short list. And look, I'm surprised as all get out. I'm just totally blown away that Tyler Reddick is turned in to be this road course racer. And with the absence of Chase Elliott, who's out due to injury, and the struggles of Kyle Larson and Martin Truex Jr., remember they were on the short list? To me, Tyler Reddick is the number one road course racer that we have right now, based on what he did last year and what he did over the weekend in COTA.
There's no doubt. I might even say that if Chase were unfortunately not injured and be with us, I think you're right about that. Right now he is. So he's number 2 in the power rankings, and that takes us to the top of the mountain.
Number 1.
William Byron will get credit for winning stage number 1, his 4th stage victory this season.
William Byron's going to go from number 2 last week. I'm going to put him back on top of the point standings, or the power rankings, I should say. One of the fastest cars of the weekend, won the pole. He led 28 laps, an epic battle with Tyler Reddick for the lead. Eventually he faded back, though, in the craziness at the end of the race. Still at a top 5 finish. But William Byron has 2 wins this year. He was really in the mix there for win number 3. Once again, the penalty right now puts him way back 22nd in the point standings. But William Byron, Mike, I think good enough to, despite not winning, be number 1 in the power rankings.
Well, I liked what happened over the weekend. They won 2 races in a row. They stubbed their toe at Atlanta, finished 32nd, and came back and was a top 5 finisher at COTA. And that, to me, is the sign of not necessarily a championship winning team, but a championship playing team or participating team to rebound from adversity like that. I like the traits that the 24 showed me over the weekend in COTA.
No doubt. They are by far right now, for a lot of circumstances around Hendrick Motorsports, the best team at Hendrick Motorsports. 2 wins, good run Sunday there, and we'll see what they got Sunday afternoon for the first true short track race at Richmond on Sunday. So
those are Pistol Pete's power rankings. You can chime in with your thoughts on those, 866 Pit Lane. You can also check them out on the SiriusXM Sports blog.